Makwetla standing by as part of our special broadcast from Constitution Hill tonight.
Well, thanks a lot for that, Stephen. As you say, a special live broadcast for the next hour. We continue our conversations with various stakeholders. I am co-anchoring with Desiree, Chauke, looking at various factors of this. We'll look at the history of incidents of xenophobia, where and why, and also delve into what efforts are being made, Desiree, by various members of the South African citizenry and population to stem this a very, very nasty phenomenon in its bud.
Absolutely, Tsepiso. It's an important conversation, right? And several African politicians coming out to say the xenophobia that they are hearing reports of is a huge betrayal of Africa's solidarity with South Africa during the apartheid times. So we're asking that question today. What are the root causes of all of this violence? And we'd like to welcome our guests. Let's start at the far end, and we have Advocate Ike Khumalo, who's joining us to have this conversation. Welcome and thank you for coming through this evening.
Thank you to the million viewers at home.
Let's, cross our fingers. And let's also welcome Dr. Kingsley Makwetla. Thank you so much for making the time.
Thank you, Desiree.
And we miss you, Manelo. Where are you?
Thank you, Desiree.
You're here to talk to us about a musical that you're working on related to xenophobia, but obviously we'll also touch on industry matters relating to this conversation about xenophobia.
And perhaps maybe let me start with you, Advocate Khumalo, just from a social perspective. Desiree was saying just now that this really is a stain on South Africa's history, but I think a public shame for the governing party, the African National Congress, because having fought for liberation through the help, the degree to which some will argue at the moment how far it really went, but a united Africa coming together to help free the people of South Africa. Is this an opportunity to rework our democratic model, to look back at society that we've built and the society we want to build?
Let me say this. It is a shame on the ruling party to unleash foreigners on the South African people. You mentioned, Desiree mentioned that it is a betrayal. It is not a betrayal. You know, the African continent, they are solving their socio-economic conditions at our expense. They're dumping their people. They're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And when you say that they helped us during apartheid, very few countries helped us. Let me tell you this. In 1977, if I think, 20 students, ANC sent 20 students in Nigeria. There was an uproar, people complaining, saying they are here to steal our wives. You know, one student was poured with acid on his face. They had to be rescued. Almost all these African countries, they've expelled us. You mentioned Mozambique, they've expelled us. They closed the camps. Swaziland, they've expelled us. Zimbabwe, they have expelled us. Lesotho, you know, they provided intelligence service to the SADF. You know, that's why people like Bohani, they were attacked there. So most of these African countries, they never helped us the way they claim that they've helped. And we are helping them now. We're investing in African countries. We are investing in MTN, you know, in ShopRite. We're not benefiting. They can trust those companies. We're not benefiting the way, you know, we're supposed to. Let me tell you this. You have APLA, you know, you have MK. They fought more in Zimbabwe struggle. They fought more in Angola. Not here. You've never seen them firing a bullet here. So when people saying that we've betrayed them, actually, it is a conspiracy of these African countries to conspire against us. You know, they send their people here, and while you look back, Nigeria, they have expelled Ghanaians. Ghanaians have done the same. Angola, they are expelling foreigners. Kenya, they are doing the same as we speak. They are expelling foreigners. We cannot allow our country, you know, to be overwhelmed by drug dealers, and when we complain, we are told that we are xenophobic. What part of xenophobia is that?
Dr. Makwetla, if we take our history back to just 25 years ago, and when the new dispensation came in, And you worked with former President Thabo Mbeki, and he has largely been blamed for this collegiality towards African countries. His African Renaissance policy encouraged working together with Africans. What kind of conversations would have gone on in terms of how we regulate the entry and movement of people from other countries into this new democratic South Africa?
Can I first respond to what Ike was saying? You know, I lived in exile. I spent the best part of my young age in exile. My experience with a lot of African countries, indeed, they supported us. You know, Agostinho Neto said, when Angola was free, he said, Angola é trancher firme da revolução in Africa, meaning that Angola is a firm trench of the revolution in Africa. Provided sanctuaries to all of us. Mozambique, Samora Machel provided a lot of support, military support to all of us. And Mozambicans were killed, Basutos were killed, Botswanas were killed by the racist apartheid regime. So they sacrificed a great deal. But despite that, this country was built on the sweat and blood of the migrant laborers from across the continent. If you remember Brayu's song, Estimela, it depicts the movement of people who came to build this country, industrialize this country, never got any benefits. Some of them, they retired in poverty in their homelands, never got anything out of this. And so I'm a beneficiary of the African solidarity.
Are we being ahistorical? Is that what you're suggesting?
No, we're not being. I think what we need to deal with is to put things in true perspectives. From my own perspective, the African continent sacrificed a great deal. I mean, I traveled with a Ghanaian passport throughout. Oliver Tambo had an Algerian diplomatic passport that he travels the world with. There was the African solidarity that we experienced to mobilize the world around. I mean, there were anti-apartheid movement throughout. Ibrahim Gambari, that I happen to know so much, a Nigerian, he used to chair the Special Committee Against Apartheid when I worked at the United Nations. You could see African solidarity each time there was something. We must, and I would encourage a lot of people to go and read a document that is called it's a document that ushered the negotiations, consensus resolution on apartheid and its consequences. The architect of the document was Oliver Tambo and Thabo Mbeki.
It's very tempting to speak about documents and make it an academic conversation. But there's also the concern that socioeconomically people have lived experiences where they suffer poverty at the hands of what Ike mentioned now as South Africans paying for something that they never really underwent.
And the majority of the people, they were in camps. They were in camps.
No, let me explain. Well, I was in exile. I can tell you where I was. Let me explain something that we should not justify as a society. Our economic and social conditions are not necessarily a prerequisite to vent out the anger on fellow Africans. I have studied ethnicity as a phenomenal conflict, and I'm afraid if we start politics of identity, we're going to turn against each other. We're going to look at which language do we speak. I mean, as it is, I was reading weekend newspapers that in Katlehong, vigilantes are starting to emerge, set up roadblocks to check if these people are really indeed South Africans. Now, how are we going to identify what we call us, one of us? What is that us?
Perhaps, Dr. Makwetla, let me jump in and ask Mr. Twala here. You are one of those who's been an activist here at home during that time in the liberation struggle. And just listening to Advocate Khumalo and Dr. Makwetla, there clearly is a divergence in what our history really is and in relation to this. For somebody who was an activist here in South Africa at the time, what was your impression and how much did you interact with musicians from other parts of the continent in our bid for liberation?
Look, in my sector, to be honest, we never experienced, especially myself, I've never been to exile. I've never experienced what Kingsley has experienced, obviously. But I did perform outside South Africa, and I was well received, by my fellow African brothers. To be honest, I wouldn't want to, to turn this thing into some kind of, war with our African brothers and sisters. We need peace. As we speak with various artists, Blem Mambazo, Mafigizo, all of us who are in the studio, we want to talk peace. We really don't think, it's the right time, to be actually fighting amongst ourselves as Africans.
So it's been politicized too much.
I think it's been politicized. I mean, South Africans are not xenophobic. I mean, to be honest with you, I'm with my African brothers from Mozambique, Nigeria, but obviously not drug lords and all that. But for us, it's normal. What we see in the streets, I thought maybe, some criminal elements that are taking place, some people taking advantage of the situation.
But as you advocate peace in your processes of putting together your work, what kind of issues are you seeing are you highlighting through this process to say these are the things we need to confront as a society?
Well, I think there's been a problem of drugs, which foreigners, to be honest with you, there are Nigerian drug lords in our country who are killing our people, that we cannot condone. But there are good African people, I know one. I mean, our deputy, what's his name, Zimbabwean, public
Kevin Malunga.
Yes. We have a lot of Zimbabweans, like professional people in our country. Not all of them, are drug lords and all that. Hence, I'm saying that it's important for us, to try not actually see all Africans, as being problem.
So, Mr. Khumalo, what for you is the solution?
This is before that. This is not a war against African brothers. That's the problem with the misdiagnosis of our politicians. When I have our people raising this problem, they are called, they are condemned all the time. Nobody listens to them. And before I continue, the good doctor here clearly has never heard of Komati Peace Accord between Samora Machel and P.W. Porter, where they closed the camps, where they expelled our comrades. In Swaziland was a very hostile country. But anyway, our government needs to listen to our people more. We cannot suffer because 2 people went to exile. Then 20 million Nigerians come here, Somalis, and even people who never helped us. Some of these countries, they were in civil war from day one. They could not have helped us. They bought more bullets, than bread. They bought, so now we're supposed to accommodate the rest of Africa. And when we do what the other African countries are doing, Kenya now, they're expelling people who are unnecessary into their countries. We cannot receive people who are coming here, adding no value, no specialized skills, people coming here, jumping borders to sell tomato.
But
we have surplus of tomatoes.
Are you not generalizing the...
I'm not generalizing.
And I asked this
question.
I'm
talking facts.
Yes, but let's talk about facts. Do we have figures? Do we know how many foreign nationals are in this country? Do you know how many foreign nationals exist in the formal and informal labor market? Do we know how many of those are arrested because of crime? And I just want to understand that, because these politics of identity are clearly leading us to this point where we are. Are we going to give criminality a nationality? Is that what is important?
Let me tell you this, empirical evidence. Go to Joburg Jail, go to Hillbrow Hospital, go to Baragwanath, you'll be far back, number 70,000 in front of you. There are people who are not supposed to be here. People come from Zambia to do operations as Steve Biko. And we must object to that and say, you know what, you must fix your countries. And there's this notion that people are generalizing all the time. Statistics are based on generalization all the time. You can never be precise to the point. And if, there are... Let me say this.
Because you said that you quoted the number, you said 20 million Nigerians. When you're insisting on being factual, this is why I'm raising it.
I was just making an example that's saying, like, we cannot suffer, be it 20 million, be it 40 million, it's neither here nor there. But what I'm saying is that the number of people that went to exile, is compared to the people who are coming here. And people who are coming here, these are not Thomas Sankaras, these are not Julius Nyereres. They are people who are coming here to compete with our people. They want houses. You go to the east of Joburg, you go to Cape Town, these are people, and who are not adding no value. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever seen Nigerians going to work? Where do they work?
But there are many professional Nigerians in this country who are in our industries.
I go to UNISA, I go to the University of KZN. Most of these guys who are coming here, they've got fake qualifications. They're not vetted from their countries. They're fake doctors. And we're supposed to be calm. We're supposed to keep calm. We're supposed to unite. We are told that we must unite. Funny enough, you are uniting in this country. We're not uniting in Nigeria. If us, we went to Nigeria, we went to Burkina Faso, all of us, with no visas, no papers, and we started selling drugs to their kids, inject them, kidnap them. I'm telling you,
Dr.
they will put us at midnight.
Last week, we saw the president of Rwanda, Paul Kagame, pull out of the World Economic Forum on Africa, and Zambians deciding to boycott. Do you think that African leaders missed an opportunity to have a proper conversation on how a solution can be brought about collectively?
There's a global concern. As I was coming here, I was listening to the Human Rights Commissioner speaking about what is the United Nations Human Rights Commissioner speaking about what's happening in this country. There's a discussion at the diplomatic level with our embassy. Remember, our envoys, they interact with more than countries that were supposed to have participated here. So there is a dialogue around what's going on here and how we're addressing these issues. I'll be, as I regard myself always as a soldier, it will be insubordination to say Samora Machel really betrayed us. Samora Machel has been the fighter for liberation, inspired most of us to go into exile, advocate. I don't share that. I've been oh yes, I've been at Samora Machel's house when he was still alive with Graça Machel and the children, and we'll sing freedom songs. The Nkomati Accord was a strategic, in any war you have a strategic initiatives that you take to manage the conflict. Not only in Nkomati, Angola did the same. A lot of countries have signed agreements with the apartheid regime, but they kept on supporting us.
That's helping us.
They kept on supporting us. We were housed by them. They sacrificed. Samora Machel lost his life mainly because of his support for this country.
But this was with an end game. You were going to fight in a struggle and go back home to a free South Africa. What is the end game with the influx of foreign nationals coming into South Africa?
Remember, Desiree, as I said to you, this country was built on the sweat and blood of all Africans. Industrialization of South Africa took a lot of Africans. A lot of people sacrifice resources. Take Lesotho, a small kingdom, was surrounded by the racist regime to topple Jonathan Liabua and install their own puppet military regime there because he supported the liberation struggle. A lot of Basutus were killed in the process. It would be unfair really to say they never did anything for us when they sacrificed with their lives. Now it's good to find a lot of peacetime revolutionaries who can shout revolutionary slogans. But there are people who sacrifice with their life, and I think we should honor those people.
Okay, let's talk about honoring those people. Desiree asked the question, what is the end game? Mr. Twala, I want to talk about young people. The young, yes, Advocate, we'll come to you in just a moment.
Tsepiso, I just want to come to this thing of what is the role of South Africa in a broader Africa. Remember, we speak about the consolidation of the African agenda. We are not an island. We are integrated within the African continent.
We're not an island, but we're not the big brother.
We're not the big brother either. But we are a partner in dealing with issues and identifying problems. I have been a presidential envoy to Somalia, the most conflict area, a great deal of respect that people have shown for South Africa to help in providing solutions to the conflict. It's so huge. So we are an integral part of the continent,
Let's
and we
bring
need
in
to
Mr.
provide
Twala in the
solution. We can't
conversation.
provide solution by pulling ourselves out.
Okay, so this is the question I wanted to ask then, and that is, if we are looking at the youth who are the biggest democratic dividend of the African continent, if you were to explain it, Mr. Twala, that we have foreign nationals in this country, some who have run away from their countries because of security reasons, some who have come here for a better life, but these are children who are then confronted with seeing their parents struggle, that battle of resources that Advocate Khumalo was speaking about. How do you then explain it to them about that bigger picture that Desiree was talking about? How do we preach harmony but at the same time see a state that performs its responsibility, that of providing for its people?
I think Advocate said a number of things which I would agree with him. But in terms of us not finding peace and unite as Africans, I think that's fair for me. Not good. I'm an African, you know. My father is from Mozambique originally, and when I hear someone, you know, talking,
Hey, Chigo, you must go back then.
And chances are that's the case with most South Africans.
Yeah, my father, yeah, exactly. And most of us actually, I have a friend.
Our origin can be traced back somewhere on the continent.
I have a friend who has a daughter with a Nigerian, you know. So, I mean, for me, to be honest with you, I'm really concerned if we're not going to talk peace. I mean, I was watching a documentary in Israel. Everyone is chasing black people outside. I mean, I thought Africa is for Africans, you know.
So how do you explain it to a young person?
Obviously, to be honest with you, I will. It's very difficult actually to explain to kids when we're actually not united. But what's name would be to actually talk peace. We must actually encourage our kids to actually love one another. Zambian, Nigerian, all of us, we need to actually encourage them to love one another. I wouldn't actually encourage my kids to actually look at the Zambian, Nigerian as an enemy.
It's a special broadcast on SABC. We're having a conversation about the violence that's been taking place in the past few weeks and trying to figure out what the root causes are. Stay with us as we continue this conversation after this break.